Single mom's mistake led to incredible twist. Billionaire with roses reveals life-changing surprise. Sarah poured her heart into each pastry she crafted at the diner by day, balancing her kids' school schedules with shifts filled with customer orders and laughter. Each morning, as the sun peeked over the horizon, the gentle light spilled across the quiet Midwestern town, casting a golden hue on the one-story houses and manicured lawns. But beneath her smile, Sarah wrestled with the weight of economic inequality. Juggling 2 jobs to make ends meet, she often wondered if her dreams of opening a bakery would drift too far away, just out of her grasp. On this particular day, her routine took an unexpected turn. While delivering pastries for a charity event, a mix-up led her to an exclusive VIP gala. The grand entrance, a flurry of designer dresses and polished shoes, made Sarah's heart race. She felt a sudden pang of inadequacy, her simple jeans and apron screaming in contrast to the glitzy ambience. But as she swept through the room, she caught the eye of Richard, a brooding billionaire, lost in his own thoughts. The moment sent a shiver through her spine. Their gazes locked, and in that instant, she felt seen. What followed surprised her. They didn't need grand gestures or smooth lines, their chemistry sparked with genuine curiosity. She could see it in his eyes, a mixture of intrigue and something deeper. As Sarah stood tall despite feeling completely out of her depth, she realized her resilient spirit shone brighter than the chandeliers overhead. Before we continue, I need to let you know about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, hit that bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can drop a like, it really helps me with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, let me know in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. With each passing moment, Sarah and Richard exchanged stories of hardship, dreams deferred, and the struggles of their very contrasting lives. She was raw, passionate, and devoted to her family, while he carried an air of detachment that revealed layers of pain hidden beneath his affluence. Their conversations flowed effortlessly, creating a bridge over their worlds, but looming tensions encircled them like a storm threatening to break. Just as Sarah began to feel a glimmer of hope, a shocking family secret emerged, unsettling the gentle balance they'd found. Every whispered accusation and lingering gaze felt like a dagger aimed at Sarah's carefully curated life. Could she reconcile her values, stitched together by years of hard work and sacrifice, with the privileged existence Richard embodied? The town, usually a silent observer of her trials, buzzed with questions about the union of a working-class mom and a billionaire. Would Sarah stand by Richard's side, or would secrets tear them apart? She had fought so hard for every inch of progress, now she felt standing at a crossroads where loyalty and love were at stake. In this unpredictable moment, she searched for hope amidst the uncertainty, knowing that perseverance, community, and forgiveness would have to guide her through the tempest. Would their hearts withstand the storm, or would their dreams, once intertwined, become the very things that tore them apart forever? Sarah felt the weight of the room pressing down on her like a cold fog. Whispers surrounded her, cutting through the laughter and music like a knife. She could see the curious glances flitting from her to Richard, mingling with a sense of judgment. A billionaire and a single mom so different, yet somehow connected. Or at least, that's what she hoped. Now, doubts crept into her mind like uninvited guests. Sarah, Richard's voice broke her reverie, warm and deep. Are you all right? She forced a smile, realizing how quickly she could disguise her turmoil behind a facade. Yeah, of course. Just taking it all in. Richard studied her for a moment, concern clouding his features. You don't have to pretend with me. His sincerity pulled at her heart. She admired the way he listened, the way his eyes searched hers for the truth. But a voice in her head echoed louder than his kindness. You don't belong here. They stepped aside from the thrumming crowd, finding a quieter corner by a large window, where the city lights twinkled like stars against the night sky. Their laughter faded into the background, replaced by the rush of cars and distant chatter. I can't help but wonder how did you end up here tonight? Richard asked, tilting his head slightly, taking in her every reaction. My pastry delivery was supposed to be for a charity event. Mistakenly ended up in this fancy gala. Guess the universe has a sense of humor, huh? Her attempt to lighten the mood fell flat. Richard chuckled softly but quickly turned serious. You have more of a presence than anyone here, Sarah. They might not see it now, but you're light. His words wrapped around her heart, and for a brief moment, she felt a rush of hope. Yet, the nagging doubt remained. Could Richard truly understand her life? The sacrifices she made daily for her kids. Suddenly, a figure burst into their space, interrupting the moment. It was Richard's sister, Isabella, her perfectly manicured hands resting on her hips. Richard. There you are. We need to talk, and you should really be careful with company. Her eyes swept over Sarah as if calculating an equation that didn't add up. A wave of awkwardness engulfed them. Sarah's breath hitched. The tension radiated from Isabella like a live wire. Richard looked between them, his expression shifting to frustration. Isabella, can't you see this conversation is important? Richard replied, annoyance creeping into his voice. Important? She's just a pastry girl running reckless into our world, Isabella shot back, her words razor-sharp. In that moment, Sarah's insides twisted painfully. It felt like an open wound, and she could almost taste the bitterness in the air. Did she want to swallow this humiliation? Could she stand her ground? Don't underestimate what I do. It may not come with a title or millions, but I work hard and provide for my children. That matters, she said, surprising herself with how fierce she sounded. Isabella raised an eyebrow, taken aback but not backing down. Passion doesn't pay the bills, sweetheart. Taking a deep breath, Sarah stood tall, feeling the support of her truth flood her veins. No, but it builds a life. A good one. Richard's expression softened as he glanced at Sarah, a hint of admiration lingering in his eyes. The tension simmered as the three of them stood together, worlds colliding in that brief silence. Everyone within earshot wasn't merely observers, they were witnesses to something much bigger. Could this moment be the tipping point where connections formed, or would it further sever the fragile ties that linked Sarah and Richard's lives? As the evening unfolded, Sarah realized she would have to decide what she wanted. Lessons of the heart were never easy. With every passing minute, the question loomed larger, was love enough to overcome the divides between their worlds? And as whispers faded into the night, Sarah felt a surge of determination, but the truth wasn't finished revealing itself yet. What more would come to light, and at what cost? The silence felt heavier after Isabella's pointed words. Richard's jaw tightened, and his gaze flickered between his sister and Sarah, as if he were caught in a storm with no clear way out. Sarah could almost hear her heart pounding, each beat echoing her resolve to stand her ground. Isabella, please, he said, his voice edged with frustration. Can't I just what? Isabella cut him off, her voice dripping with scorn. Can't I just accept that my brother has taken up with someone who doesn't have a clue about our life? Someone who doesn't even belong here? Sarah felt her cheeks flush. She remembered the countless nights spent scraping to make ends meet, the laughter of her children echoing in their modest home. This wasn't how she had envisioned the evening, and yet, here she was standing tall against the waves of judgment. Isabella, Richard interjected, leaning in closer to his sister, disappointment etched across his face. Just because Sarah isn't from our world doesn't mean she isn't worthy of respect. She's a hard worker, a mother who sacrifices so much for her kids. You should recognize that. Isabella rolled her eyes but stayed silent. The attention shifted back to Sarah, and the moment felt electric. She could feel all eyes in the room on her, waiting to see how she'd respond. Well, Isabella, Sarah began calmly, her voice steady, I may not live in a glittering penthouse or wear designer gowns, but that doesn't diminish my value. I'm just as qualified to be here tonight as anyone else. I'm here because of my work, and, honestly, anyone who measures a person by their bank account is missing the bigger picture. A soft gasp fluttered through the crowd. It was only a whisper, but Sarah could feel the shift in energy. She was no longer just a pastry girl, she was a fierce mom, standing up for herself. Richard's eyes shone with something akin to admiration. You're right, Sarah. Our worth isn't tied to our wealth. He placed a protective hand on her shoulder, a gesture that sent warmth blooming through her. Isabella's face twisted in irritation, but for the first time, she took a step back. Perhaps she didn't know how to handle someone like Sarah, someone who challenged her views of success and social standing. The atmosphere felt charged, pregnant with potential. The laughter and chatter of the gala drifted back into focus, but the warmth of the moment lingered. Sarah's vulnerability, unexpected boldness, drew her closer to Richard, and her heart fluttered as she met his gaze. Sarah, how about we get some air? Richard suggested, his voice low and inviting, creating a cocoon around them. Nodding, Sarah felt a potent mix of fear and excitement as he led her away from the fray. The crowd of chatter dimmed behind them, giving way to the quieter hum of the city beneath the stars. Once outside, the crisp night air wrapped around them like a cool blanket. Sarah drew in a deep breath, savoring the moment, as Richard turned to her. You handled that so well, he said, genuine admiration spilling from his voice. I've always admired women who stand their ground. Thanks, Sarah replied, her heart racing. The chemistry between them felt electric, an unspoken connection that danced around them like fireflies in the night. For a fleeting moment, she wondered if this would lead to something more. Could Richard really comprehend her world? And then, without warning, the door swung open behind them. Another partygoer, someone Sarah recognized from earlier, burst out, their face contorted in panic. Richard! Come quick! There's been an accident in the kitchen. Someone's down. The icy grip of fear settled in the pit of Sarah's stomach. As Richard turned away to address the chaos, she felt a new tension coil within her. The complications of their lives, the barriers between them, seemed to rise once more. Was this the moment where everything changed? Where the connection they barely grasped began to unravel under the strain of reality? Or was it a chance to see if love could truly conquer all? Sarah's heart raced with uncertainty, but one thought echoed louder than the rest: what would she do when reality came crashing in? Sarah's mind whirled as Richard sprinted back inside, urgency pulsing through him. The laughter and music from the party faded into a tense silence, and she felt completely out of place. The city's lights twinkled in the distance, but they couldn't drown out the dread rising in her chest. She stood still for a moment, anxiety swirling like a storm inside her. Was this how it always happened? Just when things began to shift, reality would swoop in like a hawk, ready to reclaim its prize. Taking a deep breath, she forced herself to move, stepping back toward the door. Inside, the atmosphere had transformed. Concerned guests clustered near the kitchen, whispering, eyes wide. The glamour of the gala turned to something darker, an edge that sliced through the air. Everyone, please stand back. Richard's voice rang out, sharp and authoritative. His commanding presence cut through the noise. Sarah edged closer, her heart pounding louder than before. She caught sight of a figure on the ground, unconscious, as Richard crouched beside him, urgency flashing across his features. She couldn't identify the person, all she knew was that it added layers of fear to her already tumultuous night. Richard's hands were moving, checking for signs of life. With each passing second, Sarah felt as if the weight on her shoulders grew heavier. The world around her fell into a blur, almost surreal. Was she even meant to be in this space? Was this not a rich man's gala she had stumbled into, but a theater performance showcasing the stark divide between their lives? The distant sirens filled the air, growing louder, urgency slicing through the panic. She wanted to help, but what could she do? Just then, Isabella strode in, her perfect facade cracked. What happened? she demanded, though the tremor in her voice betrayed her composed act. Richard looked up, his expression fierce. "Get the paramedics now." Their eyes locked for a brief moment, and Sarah saw something powerful there, something that made her realize, in this moment of crisis, he was still the man she felt so drawn to. In the midst of chaos, her feelings began to battle with a growing sense of helplessness. Sure, she was a fighter, but what could she fight against? Isabella's disdain, the weight of her own insecurities, or the blazing fire of fear for Richard's safety as he focused on saving a stranger? The paramedics burst through the door, efficient and composed. They quickly assessed the situation, and Richard stepped back, gazing at them with that glint of desperation mixed with relief. His eyes flicked back to Sarah, and the intensity of their unspoken connection sent a shiver down her spine. "Stay close," he said, not breaking their gaze, keeping her grounded in the midst of the unfolding crisis. Even as the chaos swirled around them, there was something sacred in their bond, a glimmer of hope amid the storm. As the paramedics worked, Sarah watched Richard's face morph through a range of emotions: worry, fear, ultimately determination. But it was the kindness that lingered, an echo of the man who had stood beside her just moments before. Here they were, two people from different worlds, yet united in this moment of vulnerability. Suddenly, Richard turned, his voice low, urgent against the backdrop of frantic chatter. "Sarah, we need to think about what happens next. This isn't just about the party. This could change everything." Her heart raced, a new intensity building inside her. Change. The word lingered, wrapping around them like a promise and a threat. What did it mean for their connection? What barriers could it break, and what walls might it crash into? As the afternoon shadows stretched, and the paramedics prepared to leave with the injured man, Sarah took one last look at Richard. In the depths of that eye contact lay 1,000 unspoken questions. Would their connection survive this reality, or was it destined to become another faded memory? The sirens faded into the distance, but the weight of what lay ahead pressed heavier than ever. What would happen to them after tonight? After this chaos faded, would they still find each other in the remnants of their lives? The atmosphere shifted again, a heavy calm replacing the chaos. Guests brushed past Sarah, their chatter rising and falling like waves lapping against the shore. There was a flurry of sympathy toward Richard, yet also that sharp edge of a crowd that didn't know how to deal with an accident like this. As the last of the paramedics departed, Sarah felt an urge to reach out, to bridge the gap of confusion between her and Richard. He stood at the edge of the room, his brow furrowed, but when his gaze met hers, it wasn't the sorrow she expected. Instead, there was a spark, perhaps shared hope flickering in the dim light. "What now?" she whispered, stepping forward, her voice barely above the murmur of the remaining guests. Richard looked around the room, then back to Sarah, as if weighing their next move. "We figure out how to confront this. We need to face it, not just let it slip away." That urgency in his voice ignited something in her, a mix of fear and exhilaration. They were at a crossroads, and somehow, she felt empowered, as if embracing the unknown could lead to something bigger than either of them alone. "Confront it?" Sarah asked, her heartbeat quickening, pulling her closer to him, closer to whatever this change might mean. "What does that look like?" Richard pursed his lips, visibly thinking. "It means addressing everything: the party, the people," and he hesitated, glancing back at the chaotic remnants of their shared moment. "Us." Her breath caught. A simple word, but it broke something open inside her. "Us?" "Yeah, us. We've been dancing around this connection, pretending there isn't something." His voice trailed off as he searched for the right words, but Sarah felt the weight of his unspoken thoughts. It was bold, bringing honesty into a night filled with lies and pretenses disguised as charity. "What are you really afraid of, Richard?" she pressed, not wanting to slip back into the shadows of doubt. "This moment, it's changed everything, hasn't it?" He stepped closer, emotion brimming, palpable in the air between them. "All I've ever wanted is to protect what I care about. But this he gestured toward the gathering crowd, then locked eyes with her again. This is a risk. Before she could respond, Isabella reappeared, the icy coolness in her demeanor unmistakable. Richard, we really need to talk, she said, her voice slicing through the tension. There are reporters outside, and it's creating chaos. Let them talk, Richard shot back, his anger bubbling just beneath the surface. They'll twist the story anyway. They always do. Sarah took in the interaction, sensing the battle of power between them. Isabella's perfectly crafted smile didn't reach her eyes, she was determined to regain control. But Richard's fierce loyalty toward her ignited something inside Sarah, a feeling of being valued for who she was, not just as a single mom with a past. This isn't just about tonight or one incident, Richard continued in a lower tone, turning fully toward Sarah, blocking out the world. It's about what we want moving forward. Can we even do this? Can we really step into this unknown? But the implications of his question lingered, and she felt the weight of it. Could they build something real, amidst all that swirled around them? As she hesitated, voices rose behind them. The night stretched out like a tightly wound spring, ready to snap. Whatever was about to unfold, Sarah knew it would shape their lives. Let us go outside, Richard urged, grasping her hand with a confidence that stirred her soul. But just as they moved toward the exit, the doors swung open again, and the flash of cameras illuminated both their faces. In that instant, a million possibilities surged. Were they ready to face the world together, or would reality tear them apart? Are you prepared for the truth? Richard asked over the noise, his grip tightening slightly, a mix of hope and trepidation in his eyes. Sarah took a deep breath, the weight of their futures whispered in the air. All roads seemed to converge at this moment. What would it take for Sarah to embrace the truth, no matter how challenging? And as the crowd closed in, she knew the answer was just beginning to reveal itself. The moment the camera flashes erupted around them, Sarah's heart raced like a wild stallion, thrumming against her chest. She stumbled slightly as Richard pulled her through the throng, his grip steadying her, anchoring them in this storm of chaos. Faces blurred into a mass of curiosity and judgment, but now, it didn't matter. All that mattered was Richard. Keep moving. He urged, his voice low and intense, filled with an urgency that sent a shiver down her spine. Uncertainty washed over her like a cold wave, yet she didn't resist. The heat radiating from him filled her with some strange bravery. Outside, the night air was sharp and fresh, a welcome contrast to the stifling atmosphere inside. Richard led her to a quiet corner, away from the scrutinizing eyes, just as the sounds of reporters heightened behind them. Is this how you want to deal with things? He asked, both frustrated and fierce. It struck Sarah that beneath the surface he was wrestling with something deeper. I don't know. She exclaimed, her voice rising. What do you want from me? The question hung in the air, weighted with both fear and challenge. I want you to stop running away from this, Richard replied, his eyes blazing with a determination that mirrored her own turmoil. I need to know where we stand, Sarah. I won't let the world decide for us. Before she could answer, a rush of commotion pulled her attention away. A few yards from them, a group of guests were clustered around a television set up for live coverage. The news anchors were flashing images from the party, and suddenly, the event was the talk of the town. Reports of the incident flashed across the screen, wrapped in drama, yet Richard's name stood out among the chaos. Is that what you want? She challenged, taking a step back, panic rising like bile in her throat. To have your life splashed all over the news? No. No, it's not like that. He stepped closer again, apologies dancing in his expression. I don't want this. I want you. That simple phrase caught her off guard, rendering her breathless. Everything else melted away. The crowd, the cameras, the chaos, they warned her to hold back, but her instincts urged her forward. Then let us be honest. All of it. We can't hide, she replied, each word wrapping around hope. Let us not pretend anymore. If we want this to work, her voice tapered, a wave of vulnerability washing over her. Richard's gaze softened, and a flicker of understanding passed between them. Maybe being honest is our first step, he said slowly, his tone gentler now. Starting with the truth between us. As they stood together, hearts laid bare before each other, her mind raced. But what if it risks everything? She asked, knowing there were no easy answers. Then we'll face it together. We've already taken the plunge, we can't drown now, he replied, his usual confidence shaking slightly but rooted in sincerity. Just then, the shrill ring of Sarah's phone pierced the moment, and she instinctively reached for it, anxiety twisting in her gut. It was a number she barely recognized but instinctively knew it could only be one person, her ex. Richard didn't hesitate. Who is it? His eyes were locked on hers, a mix of concern and protectiveness. It's him, my ex, she whispered, panic bubbling again like a shaken soda. Sarah, he pressed, grounding her with his steady gaze, you don't have to answer. This is your moment. Take a breath. With that simple command, the weight of the world seemed to hover in the air between them. Would she answer the call that could tip the scales of her fragile world? Could she risk everything she felt blossoming with Richard to face past shadows? For Sarah, it was a moment teetering on the brink of revelation, and she knew whatever choice she made next could change everything. She held her breath, the phone buzzing in her palm, heart pounding as the future loomed just ahead. Sarah felt the phone vibrate violently against her palm, each jolt echoing the uncertainty that flickered in her chest. Richard's eyes held a steady gaze, demanding her attention even amidst the chaos buzzing just beyond their corner of refuge. Is it him? He asked softly, almost afraid of the answer. Yeah, she admitted, the word barely escaping her lips. It was a simple reply, yet it carried a weight that threatened to buckle her knees. Her heart was split, part yearning to answer, to confront her past, and part terrified of what that past could unravel in her present. Take your time. Richard pushed a hair behind her ear, a soft gesture that reminded her just how much he cared. I'm right here. Taking a deep breath, she felt lightheaded. Richard's presence grounded her like roots hold a tree. But her ex was a ghost from her past that flickered at the edges of her consciousness, an unwelcome visitor that she had tried hard to forget. The screen lit up, showing the name that had once filled her heart with warmth and later with dread. She hesitated, fighting an inner battle while Richard watched closely, his expression a mixture of concern and encouragement. What if I push him away? She thought, eyes glazed as the call continued to ring. The question gnawed at her, wrapping around the hope she felt blossoming with Richard. She didn't want to jeopardize this, whatever this was, by reopening old wounds. But another thought tugged at her, a whisper of courage. What if this call is what I need to finally let go? Sarah. Richard's voice broke through the fog of her thoughts. You don't owe him anything. Your heart should be your priority. The gentle strength in his words settled within her. He was right. That was the essence of everything she wanted to build with him, based on truth and not shadows. Taking one last breath, she felt the weight of the moment bear down on her. The phone rang one last time before she pressed decline. You did it, Richard smiled, that boyish charm breaking through the tension. You took a stand. I guess I had to choose, she replied, feeling lighter already. She looked up, her heart racing with an unrestrained excitement. And I chose us. But before Richard could respond, the crowd erupted in a sudden wave toward the entrance, people gasping, voices rising in alarm. Sarah instinctively turned, dread creeping back in as she followed their gazes. A figure stepped out from the mass of chaos there, amidst the flashing cameras and startled guests, was her ex Sarah. He called, his voice cutting through the air like a knife. The world seemed to blur as he rushed forward, determination etched across his face. Richard stiffened beside her. This is not good, he whispered, protective instincts immediately flaring up. Panic surged inside her. What does he want? Why now? For a split second, her mind was filled with doubt. Would this moment shatter everything they had worked to build? Would it unravel the fragile thread of trust that hung between her and Richard? "Stay close, okay?" Richard said, his voice low but firm, as he stepped slightly in front of her. The world felt like it was closing in, but in Richard's presence, she found a sliver of courage. "Please, just give me a moment," her ex pleaded, desperation lacing his tone. Sarah turned to Richard, searching his eyes for reassurance, knowing they were standing at the precipice of something big. "I don't know what he's going to say," she trailed off, heart pounding. Did she really want to hear it? Suddenly, the air was thick with anticipation. The moment hung heavy, and she could hear her heart beat in her ears as she faced the unknown. What did he want, and could she handle the truth after all? "Sarah." Her ex's voice sliced through the noise, sharp and demanding. It was like a trigger, releasing memories she had buried deep within her mind. She wanted to turn away, to run and hide behind Richard, but the way her name echoed in the air left her frozen in place. Richard didn't move, though his body radiated a tense energy. "I don't like this," he muttered under his breath, his eyes darting between the crowd and her ex. The protective instinct in him was palpable, making Sarah feel both reassured and anxious. "Just one moment," her ex pleaded again, panting slightly as he reached them. "I need to talk to you, Sarah. It's important." "Important?" she echoed, feeling a mix of anger and confusion. "After everything, why now?" Her heart hammered against her ribs, trying to push out the uncertainty that was creeping back in. "Please," he begged, the desperation seeping into his voice, rendering him a shell of the man she once knew. "Just hear me out." Richard stepped closer, his presence forming a wall of strength. "You need to leave her alone," he said firmly, every word laced with protectiveness. Sarah felt his warmth, his unwavering support pulling her out of her spiraling thoughts. But there was a flicker inside her, an old urge to understand the past, to address the ghost that was now fully manifested in front of her. Richard turned to her, his eyes searching for an answer, a confirmation that she was okay. "Sarah, we can go. You don't have to talk to him," he assured her, his voice smooth as silk even in the chaos. But she shook her head, her own voice barely a whisper. "No. I need to know." The crowd loomed behind them, eyes wide with anticipation, watching as if they were participants in a dramatic play. She hated the attention, but something larger than herself was pulling her toward her ex. "Let's just find somewhere quieter," she suggested, her voice steadying as she regained a semblance of control. Richard's expression darkened, concern etched on his face. "You really want to do this?" She nodded. "I have to." As they moved toward the edge of the venue, the loud chatter faded slightly, muffling the world around her. Out of the corner of her eye, she caught the furtive glances of friends and acquaintances. Would they be judging her? Would they see her indecision as a weakness? "Thank you for talking to me," her ex said when they were finally away from the crowd's prying ears. "I know I messed everything up. But I've changed, Sarah, I promise." "Changed?" She shot back, feeling the heat of unresolved emotions bubbling to the surface. "You walked away, without a word. You left." "I know," he admitted, regret brushing over his face. "But I realize now what I lost. I didn't see it until it was too late." Richard's presence remained steady by her side, but she could feel him bristle at her ex's words. A storm grew inside her as she fought to keep her composure. "And you think you can just pop back into my life and fix everything?" "I can't change the past," he replied, voice breaking slightly. "But I want to try to make things right. For you, us." The air thickened with unsaid words and unresolved feelings. Sarah's heart raced as she weighed the gravity of the moment. She needed clarity, but what if clarity led to more questions? What if it unraveled everything she and Richard were trying to build? Richard stepped closer, leaning toward her, his expression a mix of concern and encouragement. You don't have to do this, he whispered, I'm right here. This is your decision. Her mind spun. Could she truly handle this confrontation? Would it bring closure or chaos? Just as she opened her mouth to respond, her ex leaned in closer, an urge to confess hanging in the air between them. Sarah, I need you to know how. But just as he started to speak, the crowd surged again, this time with flashing lights igniting the dimly lit space around them as a commotion broke out nearby. Sarah turned her head instinctively, heart thrumming, unsure of what was coming next. Was this another distraction from the truth? Or the worst timing she could imagine? What would she decide when chaos reigned not only within but outside of her? Suddenly, everything hung in the balance. A loud crash echoed through the venue, followed by a ripple of gasps and shouts. Sarah's heart pounded in her chest, drowning out any rational thought. She turned to Richard, whose eyes were wide, scanning the chaos unfolding just outside their small enclave. The memories of her ex faded to a blur as anxiety twisted in her stomach. She felt stranded between the past and an uncertain future. What is happening? She managed to ask, her voice almost lost in the uproar. I don't know, Richard replied, staying close. Maybe we should get out of here. Her ex's expression shifted, an odd mix of concern and irritation crossing his face. Forget about this. Just listen to me for 1 second. We can't let this moment slip away. His intensity flared, and she found herself searching his eyes for something: responsibility, accountability, sincerity. But all she saw was desperation. Around them, voices heightened, commands barked like urgent barks of a watchful crowd. Someone shouted that an electrical malfunction had occurred, likely due to the storm raging outside. Sarah felt the very air around her electrify with tension. It wasn't just about her ex anymore, it was about survival in this overwhelming moment. It's okay, we're okay, Richard reassured, placing a gentle hand on her back. But she didn't want to be comforted. She wanted to scream, to run, to tell her ex that this was not the time. Yet his presence felt like a magnetic pull, tangling her emotions. Sarah. He insisted, stepping closer, his voice filled with urgency. I've loved you all this time. I'm not asking for a full-on redo, just a chance to explain, to show you I can be better. Sarah felt the heat of tears stinging her eyes. Feelings she thought were buried deep rose like ghosts, sweeping through her with memories of laughter and heartache. Yet another fear lurked in the shadows to put her heart on the line again. Suddenly, the lights flickered wildly as people ran for the exits, panicked and disoriented. Sarah glanced back at Richard, his jaw set with determination. He wasn't going anywhere. He would support her, come what may, but what if her decision dragged them both into a storm of emotions? But the ex was still speaking, his voice barely audible over the chaos. I never stopped thinking about you. I need you to understand that, he said, his words tangled in her racing thoughts. She could feel the weight of his past hanging in the air, clinging to the both of them. Sarah, Richard murmured, voice barely audible, but it grounded her. You don't owe him anything. We can leave. The world around her blurred. She was at a crossroads, drowning in confusion. Could she muster the courage to confront her past, or would she choose to step forward into the future Richard was offering? Just as she was about to respond, the lights dimmed to blackness, the frantic shouts turned to confusion. In an instant, someone bumped into her, and she stumbled. Richard caught her, the grip of his hands on her arms steady, but within that chaos, she felt another presence, her ex looming nearby. She squinted into the dark, forcing her thoughts into clarity. How do you move ahead when the past threatens to pull you down? But before she could voice her decision, an explosive crash shattered through the darkness, and the room shook. Get out! Someone shouted, piercing her thoughts with urgency as the crowd erupted in fear. She had to act. What would she choose? In that moment, the line between safety and chaos blurred, and every heartbeat echoed the urgency of her next move. What awaited her when the dust settled and the lights flickered back to life? Would she find the strength to break free from her past, or would it trap her forever? The chaos unfurled in an instant, the room engulfed in darkness and confusion. Sarah's heart raced, coursing with a mix of fear and determination. As the crowd surged, engulfed in panic, she felt Richard's hands gripping her arms firmly, grounding her amidst the frenzy. His presence ignited something within her, an emboldened spirit that whispered it was time to break free. "Follow me," Richard shouted, his voice authoritative and fierce, cutting through the madness. He pulled her through the throng, maintaining a protective hold as they dodged bodies and confusion. The air was thick with anxiety, but with every step Richard led, she felt a rush of courage rising inside. Rounding a corner, they stumbled into a stairwell. Dim emergency lights flickered overhead, offering a haunting glow. Sarah closed her eyes for a brief moment, taking a deep breath to steady her racing heart. "What now?" she asked, the echo of her voice bouncing off the walls. "We find a way out," Richard replied, his tone unwavering. Then, softer, he added, "and when we get through this, we talk. No more distractions." Those words struck a chord within her. Finally. The promise of confronting both her past and the uncertain future with Richard felt like an anchor in the storm. It was time to step into her truth. It was time to embrace love, whatever it may look like. As they burst through the exit into the cool night air, Sarah squinted at the overwhelming glow of lights outside amid the chaos. She turned to Richard, his expression filled with resolve and admiration. "You were brave back there," she murmured, gratitude spilling over. "Now it's your turn," he replied, his voice steady and soothing amidst the screams behind them. Just then, from the corner of her eye, she spotted her ex emerging from the building behind them, frustration painted across his face. "Sarah! Don't leave. I need to," he yelled, but the urgency of the moment drowned out his words. "Let him go," Richard said, a protective determination radiating from him. "We don't need him now." With adrenaline coursing through her veins, Sarah spun to face her past. "No!" she shouted, her voice gaining strength. "Enough." Her ex froze, surprised by the fire igniting within her. "Sarah," he said, stepping closer, desperation pooling in his voice, "I wasn't," he finished. "I swear I can show you I've changed." "Changed, huh?" she countered, courage swirling within her. "You walked away when I needed you most. You don't get to just waltz back into my life and claim you've transformed overnight. I've fought hard to move on and now you want me to go backward." His mouth opened and closed, the lack of retort revealing the truth lingering beneath the surface. In that moment, she felt lighter, hand in hand with Richard as hope surged through her. Richard's calm voice broke through again. "This isn't about him, Sarah. This is about you. What do you want?" Her chest tightened, clarity pouring into her head like spring water. "I want to embrace the kind of love that lifts me, love that isn't bound by fear or shadows." "Then choose that love," Richard replied, stepping closer and taking her unsteady hand into his firm grip. A new wave of determination surged within Sarah, eclipsing her fears. She turned back to her ex, firmly anchoring her voice. "I want to let you dictate my life anymore. I've learned to love myself and my children fiercely. This is my moment, and I refuse to let the past define it." A hush fell over the chaos as she spoke those empowering words. The crowd began to quiet, turning in their direction, and the urgency in the air shifted. Feeling the weight of her truth settle firmly in her heart, Sarah turned to Richard. "I choose us. I choose to believe in a future where I'm celebrated for who I am." His eyes sparkled with admiration, blending with relief. "Then let us carve our own path, together." Just as she was ready to embrace the powerful connection knitting them closer, a nearby news anchor caught sight of them and the lights flooded their faces once more. "Sarah. Richard. Are you two together? Is this the start of a romance?" The air pulsed with excitement and surprise, but Sarah didn't flinch. "Yes!" she shouted, embracing the moment, the cameras capturing that leap of faith. "We are together, and this is just the beginning." Behind her, her ex's face twisted, shock morphing into something more complex. But it didn't matter. In that instant, Sarah realized she was free from the weight of the past, free to embrace love without fear. The crowd erupted into applause, the sound washing over her like an embrace. Sarah glanced back at Richard, their shared warmth illuminating the tremors of uncertainty now behind her. She had chosen to be bold. Together, they stepped forward, ready to face whatever life had in store. A new chapter awaited, shining with dreams, courage, and love. And as they walked hand in hand into their next adventure, Sarah couldn't help but smile, heart bursting with hope, knowing she had finally discovered her true strength. But this isn't the end. If you want to stay part of this journey, subscribe immediately to the channel so you don't miss the next exclusive stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm and show your support. Comment below with your feelings about this transformation. I want to hear from you. And share this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this inspiring journey. Don't wait not even one more second. Your support means everything.